Welcome to another episode of the Attacking Scrum podcast. It's always tough after a defeat to the English, but don't worry, we're here to help you through it. Coming up in this episode, we'll be looking at what was one of the worst TMO decisions of all time. We'll be seeing if Wales were unlucky or should have closed the game out anyway, and we'll also examine just why Eddie Jones and Mike Brown are so damn annoying. No Dan Killick again this week, so instead I catch up with a couple of great guests. In part one for Fact or Fiction, we talk to old friend of the podcast and top journalist. It's West Wales' finest, Iestyn George. And in part two, to talk about sin bin and any other business, I had a good chat to adrive.co.uk's editor-in-chief, Craig Muncey. Before we get underway, a couple of quick thank yous. Firstly, as always, our sponsors, So Coffee Trades, the fine coffee company set up by Scott Otten, the Ospreys hooker. Hopefully we'll catch up with Scott next week. But in the meantime, if you want to try some, head over to socoffeetrades.co.uk to see what all the fuss is about. And also, I'm keen to chat to Scott and find out if that's the secret of his blistering pace. Anyone who watched the Ospreys game over the weekend will have seen that in action. So, yeah, do make sure you head over there and find out. And secondly, a massive thank you to you, the listener. So we had our best ever listener figures for the Scotland Review episode. And as you probably know, we're just a set of fans who get together to talk about Welsh rugby because it's the game and the country that we love. We don't get paid to do it. We do it because we hope you'll find it fun or interesting or funny. So when you get those figures and the nice feedback we've had all week, it really makes it all worthwhile. So a massive thank you to everyone who's been tuning in. And keep listening to the Attacking Scrum. Tell your mates in the clubhouse, on the terraces or in the pub, or leave us a review on iTunes. I know I bang on about that a lot, but it helps massively. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at Attacking Scrum. Join our Facebook group by searching for Wales Rugby fans. That's proved really, really popular. I had loads of requests to that, which is great to see. And we've also got the Facebook page, which you can find by searching on Attacking Scrum as well. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Right, the first part of the show is Fact or Fiction, where we'll be having a look at 5 different statements and deciding whether they are indeed the truth or a fabrication. And joining me to do this, long-time friend of the show, it's Iestyn George. How you doing, Iestyn?
Okay, actually, considering.
Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, you must be doing better than Dan Killick, because he's not managed to make it for this show, which is a shame. I guess that makes you the Gareth Anscombe to his Lee Halfpenny.
I know, and it's been an odd few weeks on that front, isn't it? That people who we were. I'm not suggesting, Jed, that you thought of me as like a third choice, reluctant third choice, but suddenly become a vital part. A vital component of the whole thing. But
this is it. Yeah,
I'm still carrying the guilt from my Lee Halfpenny guilt, really, after the other weekend.
I think we all are a little, but yeah, exactly. It's a bit different, but yeah, I suppose that's it. And that Dan is probably Lee Halfpenny's biggest fan, and he mentions his defensive positioning at any given moment. Whenever he's struggling for a word, he seems to mention it. But yeah, let's put you in the Anscombe shoes.
Yeah,
for the
happy to be there.
So as I say, fact or fiction, we'll go through 5 different statements and we'll debate whether they're the truth or nonsense. And I'm going to start with this one. You may award the try, fact or fiction.
Honestly, it's just desperate, isn't it? It's almost. I'm trying to take myself to another place where it doesn't matter, and that Steph Evans' finger touched and the fragments and all of that stuff. I'm trying to just forget about that and say it wasn't a try and it's okay. it wasn't a try in the real world, and therefore I'm accepting that, which is a very rare thing indeed. So it's difficult. What am I going to say? Fact? I'm going to say fiction.
I know you seem like you've gone very meta on this. Like it's
Oh, totally, yeah. Because no, I have, because there are, debates talking about it long into the night, and the idea of, would it have changed things? Well, of course, it's of course it would have changed something. I don't know what, but we still had that. We still had the capacity to win in the second half anyway, so it wasn't all hinging on that. I don't like those photographs in the paper that, unequivocal proof, and then somebody comes up with the smart, a counter argument saying that Steph had actually touched it and all this kind of stuff.
I saw a really awful one today that was doing the rounds on social media, which appears to show Dylan Hartley spitting at Gareth Davis, and then you see it from the side angle, and he's a good 2 feet away.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. If it was awarding Mike Brown the most objectionable person award, not necessarily the man, as well as the man of the match, then I think the referee could have rightly awarded him that accolade, just for the getting dicked on the outside by, and then being saved, having his bacon saved by Underhill's tackle, and then having the audacity to run back and kind of like bray into Scott Williams' face.
Do you know what? That's a good point, actually, because I hadn't even. I was thinking about, there's so much been said. Oh, was it unsportsmanly behaviour? But the most important thing is he got absolutely done. That is the most important thing. Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a lot of room. It wasn't like, oh, help yourself.
Yeah.
He literally just totally gave him a free run there. There we are. So what's the answer then? I'm happy. I'll go with the referee's decision, and I'll just I'll just chalk it down as what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and just leave it at that. And I don't care about whether he travelled business class from New Zealand or any of those things, and you had one job and all that kind of stuff. I'm not bothered. Not bothered.
Really? Okay, do you know what? I'm going to have to go for the counter argument there, because I just, regardless, whichever side was on the receiving end of that decision, how you can look at that and say it's not a try is beyond me. Now, look, if he had said, look, there's a fractional touch of Steph Evans' finger, therefore it's a knock on, you can't award the try, fine. Once you've gone to grounding, like, it's how many tries have you seen where there's an absolute feather of a touch, and you'd have to get snickometer out to even register it, that are given, and then for that not to be given, I think is absolute madness. So yeah, I'm gonna fight the angry young man, or not so young man, but the angry man camp.
I feel the spirit of Dan Kinnock is overwhelming me, and I almost want to agree with you now.
But that's it. I was going to say, normally when you and I get together, it's an overly melancholic, maudlin affair.
Yeah.
So I think that must be it. There must be some kind of ghost of Dan Kinnock's optimism. But I mean, you're quite right though, in the sense that there was enough opportunities to win that game, regardless. And I always said the same thing with the Warburton decision in the semi-final of the World Cup. While we're still opening up wounds, we should have won that game, because Steve Jones should have kicked his kicks, and as should James Hook in the first half, and we should have had a drop goal at a reasonable angle. So you're right, you do have the destiny in your own hands, don't you?
Yeah, I'm afraid so, and it was great that they managed to show so much character and scramble their way back, by hook or by crook into the game. I think, I just think that's genuinely, it felt like 2008 in it felt like we'd got away relatively lightly after 40 minutes, but there we are.
I think you're right, but it probably leads us on nicely to this next point with regards to having the opportunity to win the game and putting refereeing and TMO decisions to one side. The next statement is this: Wales's decision making cost them the game, fact or fiction?
I'm going to go with fiction on this.
Okay.
Do you want to? Do you want to mount the argument?
Yeah,
one way or the
I've got
other?
fact lined up on this one actually.
Okay.
I think that there's a number of different things. First of all, the kicking game simply wasn't working, and we had to change things and start putting the ball into touch a lot sooner than we did, because for all of his odious characteristics, Mike Brown was gobbling up those balls left, right, and centre, and we just got no change out of it. And to be honest, there were points in that game where I thought they were going to run away with it, and I think a lot of that came down to the decision making. Now, I know that a change to the back three, particularly when the conditions are like that, was always going to be a difficult one. But I just think the ability to adapt during the game meant that, it did show that kind of that lack of flexibility. So whether that was coming from the stands or coming from the players on the pitch, we had to start booting the ball out, because I think our set piece went well actually. You had Shingler stealing a crucial one off one of Jamie George's throws. I think we'd have put more pressure on them at set piece than we would have by just letting them run the ball back. And if you're gonna kick the ball like that, and whether it be from 10, 15 or from a box kick, you've got to be a lot more accurate than that. And for all the talk of Wigglesworth, Danny Kerr showed how you box kick.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of you talk sense, and it's hard to disagree with you, but I'm going to anyway. I genuinely think that Wales were unable to have the time and space to actually put anything remotely like a pattern of play together. I think they were fighting for survival in the first 40 minutes, and the you're right, the executions were poor, and I think you just have to. It's that classic thing of sometimes you're going to struggle to perform to your ability when you're under such huge pressure. And it's not like, oh, Eddie was right all along then. No, it's not that. It's just that England are good. And it was all, what I like, obviously, and what we all admire, however reluctantly, about Gatland's teams is that throughout the years, he's always just got them to hang in there until they found something, and they found some rhythm. And, even with the Scarlets around before Christmas, I remember a couple of games where they didn't really look like they were at the races in the way that the ridiculously high standard that we'd become used to. How blasé are we? Yeah, why don't you just, it's a lot to ask. And it's not a condemnation of the players, but put under pressure, Gareth Davies' box kicking isn't the best in the world. Well, that's, so, and the kicking was poor, but I think they were just under too much pressure to be able to execute the game, any kind of game plan. They were just fighting for survival.
I'll go off on a quick tangent there, because it's an interesting point you mentioned about, I suppose, the resilience of Warren Gatland's sides. Just kind of taking stock after 2 games, 2 very, very different performances. But I think both of them had their merits. While the first game against Scotland had the sparkling rugby we've been longing for so long, I think you're right that the game yesterday did show that there's still that kind of scrapping ability, never say die kind of attitude within there. You think, if we're able to combine those 2 things, the first 2 games would suggest that Wales are at last kind of moving in the right direction.
Well, it's hard not to think that it's nearly there. The combination is nearly there. I think it's they're possibly, I don't know, a world-class second row partner, or an amazing tight head prop who's pushing Samson all the way away from being the complete unit in the front 5. and you can't really argue with what's happened in the back row, and there's plenty more to come, you know. So yeah, it's really odd. I felt deflated yesterday and felt it was a missed opportunity, but at the same time, it's not. I don't think it's just some sort of consolation talk. I just think it did show a lot of really of strong qualities, because you know there are going to be times when you don't play that well, and you can't. You know, it's the balance of Halfpenny looks good in a certain, when you're not forcing him to be a creative player from 15. So if you've got other creative players around, it works. So the balance seems to be nearly right, and the determination's definitely still there without question.
Well, we're going to come on to team selection and kind of who slots in where a little bit later on, but just to kind of finish on yesterday's game, we want to debate the third statement, which is this: that game played in dry conditions and Wales would have won. Fact or fiction?
My instinct, I was going to say fact before you even finished the sentence, because I just convinced myself that was the case. But they're quite good, aren't they? Johnny May and those fast, quick lads out there.
Yeah.
And Joseph's no slouch either.
I've got to ask you this quickly. Right, it seemed as though he was brought back into the team, particularly to try and negate some of our backs, in particular Patchell, because he's outstanding defensively as well. But why the hell was Teo picked the week before? I don't understand that. Was he trying to get some rugby under his belt, or does Jones not fancy Joseph?
I think Jones is thinking who would I pick if I was playing? It's almost who would I pick if I was playing New Zealand every week? Who am I going to pick in the World Cup final? He's sitting there now. He's got a little table in his bedroom where he goes off and he sits there and he moves all these Sabutio players around, and he's trying to be a commentator, and he's always Ben Teo's always in that team, isn't he? I think.
Yeah.
He's obviously. It's funny. It's he's either that or Teo's got something over Gatland and Eddie Jones, and some sort of terrible secret that we don't want to even think about.
It doesn't bear thinking about, actually, does it? I think we better bring it back to.
I've got a
rugby quite quickly.
Can I add another fact or fiction just momentarily?
Yeah,
so it
go
won't
on.
take forever. Here's the. Warren Gatland proved that he's a better coach than Eddie Jones because of Wales' second half performance.
Ooh, wow, that's big.
Conclusively proved.
All right, if it's conclusively, I would say fiction. But again, this is almost like a bit of a role reversal, because normally I'm being I'm the one who tries to defend Gatland a bit, which is never a particularly fashionable thing, and you're the one who's berating the style of rugby they're playing. But
yeah,
no, I don't think he is, because for the oh god, this is tough though. Look, they're both I think world class coaches. They know how to galvanise sides. They know how to get them ready. I think again it's so difficult to compare because of the players at their disposal. You know, England just have that much more strength and depth than we do. I don't know. I think Jones probably does still edge it a little, doesn't he?
I just think that they didn't kick on,
Yeah.
and I was really surprised. And you have to give the players the credit for that.
Yeah.
But I was just really surprised, and I think that he would have been. Jones would have been felt slightly embarrassed, and in that quiet little room of his with his little Sabutio players, he might well have thought, I might he might just have had a tiny moment of self-doubt
Do you think
where
do you think he's looking at himself in the mirror and
yeah,
saying, "Yeah, you are strong. You are a warrior."
yeah.
He's bigging himself
All
up
you
there.
need to do is grow a beard, and yeah. So I don't know.
I like the thought that he will turn up at the next press conference with a white beard and
beard, yeah,
white hair, like Leland Palmer in Twin Peaks, where his hair just goes white overnight.
yeah. That's what a brilliant cultural reference. That's reference of the night there, I think. Well done. No, I think so. I think that could happen. And then the other thing, obviously, is the first Lions. As he talked himself out of the Lions job
Yeah.
with that. That's the other thing. But anyway, we won't dwell on that for now.
We won't. All right, then let's just quickly get
Yeah,
a conclusion on that one. Then, if that game was dry, would Wales have won it?
I would say fiction, just because not that they would not have had a chance of winning, but I think that it was more of a leveler than I think England would have had just as much chance to, but they didn't get any galloping forwards apart from obviously Launchbury's piece of absolute genius. Aside, there wasn't a lot of offloading among their forwards.
Yeah.
But I just would have thought that Simmons would have been very dangerous.
He looks like a South African number 8 to me. One of those really athletic kind of, like Paul Spies who could just run, Ryan Kankowski who could, who'd all just have such amazing speed on the, they talk about those players who thrive on the high veld. He looks like one of those to me. He's a freak of an athlete, I think.
Yeah, but unfortunately they're all playing for Ireland now anyway, aren't they? So that's how many were there? 7? Was there 9 playing for Ireland yesterday?
Was there as many as
I
that?
exaggerate.
Oh, right. Well, let's go with it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. And I won't have anything bad to say about Hadley Parks either. Right.
No.
Let's move on quickly.
Okay.
Right then. Let's go for this one next. Spoken about the kicking game a lot, and we've drawn parallels between yourself and Gareth Anscombe. So let's go with this one. Gareth Anscombe should start at number 10 against Ireland. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. You can't, Patches. I think we know now. I think we kind of instinctively thought that's why we were all kind of holding our handbags up to our chins in horror when there were unkind things being said about him before the game. Is that I think we all wonder about his kind of whether he's going to be. I don't think he can be Mr. Consistent. I think you can't. Again, you just if you have a more complicated ambition, it's harder to be consistent. You can't have steady Eddie and creative genius in the same package. I don't think. And obviously there are some rugby players who come along once in a generation who prove that that can be the case, but not many. And I think Patrick just needs to give him games, and if he shows 2, 3, 4 games in a row that he's going backwards, then you have to take action on that. But I think you just play. England closed him off. Ireland will try and do the same, but he's proved that he can do it, and he definitely deserves another chance, without a doubt.
Okay, I think it's a horses for courses thing, and I loved watching Patchell against Scotland and doing what he does so well on the, when you get some front football, and ultimately, look, that was the difference in the 2 games, wasn't it? We were starved of front football against England, and we had it in abundance against Scotland, and that was really the difference, I think. But at the same time, I don't know. I think that the game against Ireland is going to be quite similar. And it's going to be a tough battle up front. I think it could be a bit of an arm wrestle. Look, they will kick the leather off the ball. Make no bones about it. And so I just wonder whether perhaps Anscombe might offer you that bit more control at 10, enabling you to kind of bring Patchell in as a second playmaker into the. I don't know. I think yesterday just reaffirmed to me what I was banging on about before the tournament, that I think he is a 15. I think Patchell's a wonderful 15, but as soon as Halfpenny's fit, I don't think he's going to get a look in there. But I would still be looking at it. I think you could have a really fluid back three with Halfpenny on the wing, Patchell at fullback, Steph Evans or Liam Williams or George North, or whoever you decide to pick on the other. And I think that they can all work together, and you still benefit from Halfpenny's defensive qualities, and you still also have that counter-attacking ball-playing threat that is Reece Patchell. I'm really keen to see when Bigger's fit. I'm keen to see if you could fit Patchell and Bigger into the same lineup.
Yeah, I was going to suggest to you, what would you do if all three were available for selection? Wouldn't you? What would you do against Ireland? Because I think you're bang on. I think you're spot on, and I'm just not very good at the horses for courses thing.
Really?
Only because I just worry about players who are picked and then not picked, and and whether that has any effect on them. And whether it indicates something, and whether it, it was not a problem was it with O'Gara, and there are plenty of teams who have demonstrated that they play different tens for different times. It would just strikes me as it feels that Gatland isn't totally secure with him. It sounded
and yesterday
it sounded a little bit. He didn't sound particularly enthusiastic about it.
No, I think the fact that he pulled Patchell and moved Adams to 15 rather than just, because there was no 15 cover on the bench, rather than just switching Anscombe and Patchell, that definitely seemed like an indicator to me. But I do think he's one of those players that you have to look at and say, right, we need him in the team somewhere. And I think some days he'll do a fantastic job for you at 10, and other days I think kind of coming in from 15, he can cause the opposition a lot of damage there.
So would you say France, Patchell? Yes. And you'd say
but
Ireland.
then also when Bigger will be fit for the France game.
So he may be also fit for the next for the Ireland game.
He might be. I'd be surprised. And if that is the case, then I'd render this one completely redundant, and I'd pick Bigger at 10.
Right. Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, there's been a huge amount of write-up about Gareth Anscombe today, and I thought he played very well. There's still a couple of really, simple errors in there, a couple of daft knock-ons and stuff. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to be fully convinced with him.
I'm not.
But I know I'm not in the minority now.
I'm not, but it's not because I don't think he's good. I just think he hasn't had a full season of rugby, and if he has a full season of rugby, we'll be able to think: is he, that he's really worth, he's worth all that investment in him, which is another piece of added pressure. I know it seems ridiculous, really, now because he's been around long enough.
Yeah, I just can't figure out with either of them whether they're 10s or 15s. And I think Patchell for me, I think I'm erring towards him being a 15. And Anscombe, I'm still not sure, because I would have said prior to yesterday 15, but he played his best rugby at 10 yesterday.
And he looked quite really happy in a heated battle situation, but then the game had broken up quite a lot. But it was, that was more of the Super Rugby expert that we thought when he came over, I guess, to a certain extent.
That is true. All right, let's move on to the last one.
Okay.
And again, it relates to selection. We've touched on a couple of these things already, but the statement is this: the backup players for Wales have done very, very well, but the first string of North, Liam Williams, Halfpenny, etc. should come straight back into the starting lineup for the Ireland game.
I think it's a horses for courses situation, really, Jed. No, In the back row, I would probably concede Moriarty, and the others I'd have an arm wrestle with you over.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I think I just cannot. I cannot love Aaron Swingler enough, as you know, but Navidi's rapidly, turning into my new Aaron.
Yeah.
It's remarkable.
He just continues to find more and more, doesn't he? Really. And I thought he had a once in a lifetime game against New Zealand in the autumn. I thought, fair play, you've proven you can go at it. Almost like a bit of a Rocky Balboa type moment where you think, oh yeah, he's given Apollo Creed a good fight, but that'll probably be it. And like Rocky, he keeps coming back and finding.
And
I think
more. I think he had again through the haze of Harvey's bitter in Hove RFC yesterday.
It's a great fight, by the way. That really is.
It is, yeah. I might be making this up, but it just felt like he had at least another 2 sort of turnovers that just didn't go our way, and I felt that Gossett was a bit slow on the uptake a couple of times. He seemed to have an entire, when he gripped, he seemed to have got his mitts on the ball and then took the whole rack, sort of moved it. It was like there were about 7 people that appeared to be latched onto various body parts, and he was right at the heart of it yesterday. But there we are. But he's been amazing. So no back row changes. Back 3, you have, depending on what you're doing in the middle of the park or at 10, you have to play halfpenny. If you play bigger, why not play Liam at 50? But that's the old favourite, isn't it? Really,
it is. Here's one for you, then. Is Liam Williams enough of a? I know he offers an amazing counter attack, but does he pass the ball enough for a 15?
Are you making Brown-esque allegations?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone's in that regard. And that was the biggest crime of yesterday, is that Wales' kicking game made Mike Brown look that good, because he's fine in the air, but I wouldn't take him ahead of. I wouldn't take Mike Brown ahead of Halfpenny, ahead of Liam Williams, ahead of Reece Patchell. I'm just not. I wouldn't take him ahead of Watson, who they've got on the wing. Dan Evans, yeah. Dan Evans, I wouldn't take him ahead of Mike Rhea. I'm just not now. I'm just not that arsed on him at all.
What I'm really looking forward to is Eddie Jones not taking him on the Lions tour, and then then Mike Brown playing the audio clip of him having a go at Chris Jones, going on about 23 games in a row, and you lot are the etc.
Yeah.
What a funny little outburst that was. But
really strange.
And then Mike sitting at home throughout the summer playing that every time he gets that. Maybe it'll be his mobile, it'll be his
his ringtone.
Ringtone, possibly.
That's it.
But there we are. I don't have any problems with this. I don't know. I'm happy with Liam. Until I'm proved wrong. I don't care. But I think he can. He knows when there's a pass on, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just something. I don't know. Maybe in the autumn, he was guilty a little bit of.
He was.
I think maybe of just being almost the victim of his own success as what he'd achieved during the Lions tour, and kind of felt he had to do it all himself. I'm playing devil's advocate there a bit, but
I felt he was isolated a lot of the time. That when he definitely he didn't break the first tackle as often as he had done previously, and as a result got quite isolated. But I think he likes a little wrestle on the ground as well, doesn't he? So he's not, he's quite sensible in that way, not like the French shots at half today. It was Boxes was passing the ball like you wouldn't believe. Hospitals left, right, and centre to his teammates. But no, I don't have any worries about him there. But it feels right if Patchell is playing 10 for Halfpenny to play 15, but they know a lot more than about and it would make sense for Liam to play if Bigger was 10. That's my rather uninformed view of things.
All right, Iestyn. Well, I'm sure we'll be chatting to you throughout the rest of the Six Nations as well. But thanks very much for filling in and doing your Gareth Anscombe impression this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been a privilege.
And we'll catch up with you very, very soon.
Magic.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Tongues of fire on Idris flaring, news of foe many declaring to heroic deeds on.
The second part of the show is Sin Bin, where we get an opportunity to throw some of the things that have been annoying us into our fictional version of Rugby's Room 101. And I'm delighted to say that joining me to do that is Craig Muncey, the editor-in-chief of adrive.co.uk. How are you doing, Craig?
Very well, thanks, Jed. How's yourself?
Yes, I'm all right. It's always a stinger, isn't it? It always ruins your weekend when Wales lose, but particularly against England.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so close yet so far. A few decisions, few wrong decisions made by us. Also the TMO, obviously, which I'm sure we'll cover off at some point.
How did you know?
What a guess, eh?
I think that's it. Sometimes for Sin Bin, normally I've got one up my sleeve because I'm a bit of a miserable bugger. But our usual co-host Dan Killick is scratching around to find something. But we've had no shortage of stuff sent in by the audience this week, and really there's only one place to start with that TMO decision. So let's get your take on that, Craig. Did you see something that the rest of us didn't?
I didn't see anything that the TMO saw, put it that way. For me, that was a try. The only thing I thought slightly was a knock on from Steph Evans, but he obviously sees no problem with that because they move away from that actual moment and move on to the grounding. That's the part where obviously he's made that decision. But in terms of the grounding, I don't know how much more clear cut you can make it, if I'm honest. It's definite downward pressure.
Well,
I don't know if you remember many years ago, Mike Hall tried against England, where but there was hardly any downward pressure, to be totally honest.
Well, that's it. I was racking my brains to try and think of examples of ones where kind of the most wafer-like touch has been enough for the try to be given, but that just looked so clear cut to me. And I know actually some of the stills can be quite misleading, and I think that's kind of the thing we have in the age of social media, isn't it, where you can kind of be misled by one or two stills. But I've watched it back a million times, and there's nothing in there that suggests it's not a try.
No, as I say, I was watching Scrum 5 a little bit earlier on, and Mr. Gus Guts is still saying there's a knock on. It hits his little pinky, Steph Evans, slightest of touches, but for me it goes back off his finger onto his leg. But as I say, the TMO clearly thinks there's no problem with that because they move away from that incident and move on to the grounding. It's the grounding that he makes a decision on, which I'm mind-boggling, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the other thing that I found quite strange, and if quite a few people have pointed this out, and Samantha Richards, one of our Facebook users, was quick to point this out as well, was that at the other end, Johnny May's try where he slid in, there doesn't seem to be much footage of him actually grounding the ball himself.
No, absolutely. When he slid along, they seemed to cut away, didn't they?
Yeah.
And we didn't. It certainly wasn't instant grounding, put it that way. But for me, that's a very poor TMO decision. You can't say it's changed the game because you don't know what would have happened, but it certainly would have made it very, very interesting. So.
Well, that's something I was keen to get your take on as well, because I think obviously if that happens in the 80th minute when the clock's red, then it's a very, very different scenario. But 22 minutes into the game, is it enough to say it would have? How do you think that would have changed the face of that fixture?
Yeah, it's very hard to say, isn't it? But obviously, my take on that would have been, you've got a try on the board. I know it's out on the touchline, so who's to say we've got the conversion? But it's 5 points on the board, and they're going in at half time. It's a different ball game for me. It's very hard to say. The thing I would say is obviously, the Owen Farrell kick for the Johnny May try is a fantastic kick, but if that try is given to Gareth Amscombe, the kick that Patchell puts in across field, that's a beautiful kick. And all the doubts about Patchell's performance would have gone away with that particular moment, if that try is given. So, it almost has it almost compounds two issues, really, if you like. So, but
yeah, it's a really interesting way of looking at it, actually, and I hadn't really figured that into the equation, because you watch the whole game, particularly Patchell kind of getting the shepherd's crook, as it were, and you think, oh well, he's had a bad game. You're right, that changes the perspective from an individual point of view as well as a team one.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't hide the fact. He was struggling, but he was getting a lot of pressure on him, and the ball was very, very slow as well back to him. Not going to make any excuses for him, but one moment like that, when we score a try, and suddenly he's on the front foot as well, and breeds confidence throughout the whole side. So we can't say it was what changed the result, but it would certainly made it very, very interesting.
It would have done, yeah. So we're going to move on from the TMO, but a big thanks to everyone who got in touch on Facebook to vent their spleen a bit with that. So yeah, Linda Ormsby, Tim Riley, Gene Williams, Steve Davis, Helen Bolton and Lee Ork, who all did that. A couple of other things that have been brought up, and as you might imagine, there's more this week than usual, with it being a Wales-England clash. But quite a few people mentioning kind of Mike Brown's antics on the pitch, particularly an incident where he seems to be sneering at Scott Williams after that tackle from Sam Underhill. What did you make of that?
It's Mike Brown, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think he's many people's favourites if you're not a Harlequins or England fan. He gets involved in things, the Rugby World Cup at Twickenham. He was getting involved in a few things there, and after the game, his interview, you've got to be a bit of a professional, and I thought he let himself down a bit there. But he's certainly not my favourite. I think he gets up to some antics he doesn't need to. But I will say he had a very good game yesterday, unfortunately. But,
there's no denying that. I think it's very easy to see it, because it's very easy to paint him as the pantomime villain, really, just given what he's like on the pitch. But yeah, you touched on the off the pitch stuff there with the post-match interview that he did in World Cup 2015, and I wanted to bring that back to some of the press antics that we've had this week, particularly from Eddie Jones, both before and after the game. And yeah, I think it's another kind of cause of irritation for quite a few Wales fans. Do you think he kind of lacked a bit of class this week, Eddie Jones?
Yeah, I do. I do think he did. I got to be honest. I think he was concerned. I think he realised there was a big test for England. And I think during the game as well, you could tell he was getting a bit flustered. And there's one time he came down out the stands and was talking to his front row replacements that are going to go on, or as he calls them, his finishers. So, I do. I think he was a bit flustered. There's no doubt his record as a coach, but I think there's a few things. I think in some cases I thought it was taking a little bit out of hand, because obviously people want to sell stories. But the Alan Wynne thing, I didn't quite understand that. The Patchell one I got a little bit more, because he is third choice, and you want to put a bit of pressure on a guy who's coming to Twickenham. But Alan Wynne has been there and done it. So I don't know why you get involved, in what he did with Alan Wynne, but there you go.
With the Patchell one, it's interesting. Obviously, like you say, and as we've kind of covered to a certain extent, he certainly didn't have his best games. How much do you think that was down to the mind games of Eddie Jones, and how much of it was just down to the fact that the conditions didn't play into Patch's hands?
I think it was more the conditions. Rhys Patchell, has been a Cardiff Blues fan and watching a lot of him at the Scarlets. he doesn't really get flustered. He does struggle with slow ball.
Mm.
He likes to be on the front foot, as many number 10s do. He's a ball playing 10. He likes to take it up to the line, and the ball was slow. Gareth Davies was getting scragged a lot. He was also taking a few steps to clear the ball, and the conditions certainly didn't help Pastor as well. I thought that our kicking game was poor on Saturday. I thought the aerial game we were completely dominated, and I didn't quite understand where we were going with our kicking game at times. But for me, it was more Patchell's performance and more the conditions rather than Eddie Jones getting into his head, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Craig. Right, bring Simbin to a close then. As this week's guest, you have the honour of deciding. So just to recap on the choices, we've got the TMO decision. We've got Mike Brown. We've got Eddie Jones. We've got Johnny May's grounding. Or indeed, you can choose something. You can choose something of your own. So it's up to you. What would you like to condemn to the abyss this week?
I think I have to go with the prolific on this one, really, don't I? I think I have to go with the TMO. I can't see I can go anything else, if I'm totally honest. That's
it. Tempting it is to chuck Mike Brown in there. I think you made a wise decision there.
Yeah, I think it's a TMO.
And then the final part of the show, we always like to have a roundup of some of the news from I guess the other bits and bobs from around the world of rugby, in particular with Wales, and I think you're probably best positioned to help us do that, Craig. Okay. I know you've had one eye on the regional games this weekend. We're keen to get a steer as kind of which players impressed you throughout the course of those games.
Yeah, I think there's some decent individual performances. Obviously we only had the one region winning, unfortunately, Cardiff Blues. The Dragons, got a draw, which, if you look at that, that's certainly not a bad result. The Scarlets were very disappointing earlier on today. They were totally outgunned. And the Ospreys, well, they're just so inconsistent this season. You don't know 1 week from the next what's going to happen. In terms of individual performances, as I say, there were some decent ones. David Howells had a good game on the wing for the Ospreys. He doesn't get many outings, so it was good to see him playing really well. Halamanos was excellent for the Dragons at fullback. He's certainly playing with confidence at the moment. He seems to have more belief in himself, if I'm honest, watching him play this season. He's always struggling with a confidence play, but he's really playing well. And he's certainly got to be in the mix, I think, for the Ireland game. I know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this because there's
so many, but
there's some people. We've kind of gone from the start of the tournament as kind of putting a back three together from kind of who's left over, and now as we head into the third round of matches in a fortnight's time, it seems like there's a hell of a lot of issues in there. Do you think Halamanos, is kind of will be able to do enough to force his way into that?
Well, it's tough, isn't it? Because he's only got, it's 2 weeks away, the Ireland game. So, he caught the eye, certainly, playing, on Friday night. But yeah, you still think he's a little bit behind, some of the other players. But I don't think he let him down. I certainly don't think he let him down. As I say, I've always been a little bit concerned about his defence. And I think sometimes he's a bit hesitant when he gets the ball, but he seems really confident at the moment, and he's a good footballer as well, which certainly helps in the back three, especially against Ireland. He was picked, because Johnny Sexton has cross kicks. He is good under the high ball, and as I say, he's got a good kicking game as well. So he certainly won't let Wales down. Yeah, no,
I mean, as you know, I can tend to be a little bit one-eyed around Dragons issues every now and again, but he's certainly a player who, he's got all the ball skills to do it for Wales. And I think the way that we played against Scotland in particular, he would relish a game like that because, when he gets those opportunities, he's a great finisher. He's a fantastic broken field runner, and he's got really good natural skill sets. So it's great to see him have a good game on Friday night and start to work his way back into form after a little layoff from injury.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have more competition for places. So it will certainly be interesting to see how Gatland goes in 2 weeks and what his selection is.
Anyone else who stood out for you across the regions over the weekend?
Well, it's similar to what you said about Dragons. I can be a bit one-eyed with Cardiff Blues, but I thought Seb Davis, again, he's back playing. He's been off a little bit of a viral infection. He was really, really good on Saturday night. He's a really strong physical lock, but he's a really good athlete as well. So, I think in the next year or so, he'll certainly be pushing for Welsh honours. And again, Nick Williams was really, really good on Saturday night. Scored a try. And when in defence, when he gets over that ball, I don't know why it takes to budge him, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
He's just such a massive a person that well, he's almost impossible to budge off that ball. So they're the ones I would pick out, if I was honest, looking at the games this weekend.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Seb Davis is another interesting one because, like we were saying with the back three, you kind of look back to last summer, and we were kind of scratching around for second rows to go on the tour to where we Tonga and Samoa.
Yeah.
And now you look at it, and you've got Corey Hill, who's forced his way into the first team alongside Alan Wynne-Jones. You've got Bradley Davis, who's recovered his form fantastically, and then obviously you've got Seb, who looks to be a brilliant proposition going into the future, and some of the players like Beard and the likes into the mix as well. So that does feel like a position where there is starting to be some more strength in depth.
Absolutely, yeah. Corey Hill has amazed me. This autumn he came in and was excellently replaced. Unfortunately, Jake Baller picked up that injury, and he's gone strength from strength. Some of the tackles he made, yesterday was superb. In open play, there was one where the tap tackle. I can't quite remember which English player it was, but he was through. If Hill hadn't made that tackle, and I know Gatland raves about him, so. Full credit to the guy. I thought he was a bit of a stopgap, if I'm honest, but he's there in merit, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it is really encouraging watching the likes of Hill and Navidi, who, again, both those players, as much as I say I can be a bit one-eyed with the Dragons, I did wonder whether he was able to. I thought he was a fantastic player for the Dragons, but I wondered whether he was going to be able to make that step up. And it just looks as though he's really, really found his feet there in the same way that Navidi has done in the number 7 shirt.
Yeah, Naveed's been excellent. I thought he's physically strong again on Saturday. He got at least one turnover, I remember. He carried well. And again, going back, being positive, we've got a bonus point against the second best team in the world. And as you say, none of those first 15 players before the Six Nations weren't playing. So there's real competition for places and a number of key positions now. So that can only be positive, this Six Nations and building towards the World Cup.
And as you mentioned earlier on, being a Cardiff Blues fan yourself, the other big news this week has been more murmurings about the future of where the Blues are going to be playing their rugby, and a potential leaving Cardiff Arms Park. What have you made of that story this week, Craig?
It's a real shame. There's so many conflicting bits of information here, but the major players and that just need to get together and sort it out. It's been going on for at least 10 years of negotiations now, and it doesn't seem to be any closer than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It is a real shame. Cardiff Blues as a region, how they're supposed to bring in new coaches and bring in players when they don't know where they're going to be playing, and it's a real mess, behind the scenes, and the sooner they get sorted, the better. You do wonder whether this is just a bit of a threat to try and move things along, saying we will go elsewhere. But I'm unfortunately not close enough to what is going on with the athletic club and with the Cardiff Blues themselves. But you just hope and pray they can get together and resolve this issue, really.
Yeah, you do, and it's really interesting. You hear bits of tittle tattle on social media, kind of from both sides, and people who are supporting, the varying, the two varying parties on this and their position. But I think it was kind of Paul Williams's tweet this week that kind of summed it up for me, and he kind of said, "Professional sport waits for no one," and that's the stark reality of it. Is if you want to see a side playing in the capital, this has got to get sorted, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's an AGM coming up next month, but yeah, they need to get down and sit them down together, and they just need to get sorted out.
Well, yeah, hopefully that'll be the case, Craig. And
Hopefully.
yeah, just a quick word then before we let you go about the website. So obviously we've got a partnership running with yourselves this season where you've been kind enough to promote us, and obviously we like to give you guys a shout out on air as well because it's a fantastic website. Anything in particular we should be looking forward to reading about on adrive.co.uk?
Yeah, as you say, we've got a bit of partnership going. It's great to support you as well. So in terms of the website, yeah, there's been a lot of Cardiff Devils things going on in the last few weeks. Some of the guys, Julian Blackburn and Ollie Hampson, have managed to get a few interviews with a couple of Cardiff Devils players, which have been published, and we're getting some really positive reviews on that, and the Cardiff Devils fans seem to be really enjoying those. So yeah, they've been going really well. Obviously, quite a few Six Nations things going to be going up as the tournament goes along. The boys are enjoying watching the different sports in Wales and the different level of success we're having. So I'm sure over the coming months we'll be putting our own thoughts around those sporting events.
Well, yeah, as I say, it's a must for any fan of Welsh sport. So do make sure you check it out. But Craig, look, it's been brilliant chatting to you as always. Thanks very much for joining us on a Sunday night, and hopefully you'll get over the England game and be able to get on with your week pretty soon.
Yeah, let's hope so. Thanks for inviting me, Jeff. Thank you.
Cheers, Craig.
So that's it for another week on the Attacking Scrum podcast. Hopefully that's managed to brighten up the start of your week and take away a little bit of that bitter aftertaste of losing to England. Big thank you to my guests this week, to Iestyn George and to Craig Muncey. And thank you again for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, of course, feel free to do so on Twitter at Attacking Scrum. You can do the same on Facebook, on either the Facebook page, which is Attacking Scrum, or the Facebook group, which you can find by searching for Wales Rugby Fans. We'll be back next week, so make sure you tune in and carry on listening to the Attacking Scrum.